What's going on, everybody? In the studio, and as you can see, notes in front of me means it's gear review time. Today, we're tackling the Sony A74 and its upcoming release date. We're going to be talking about mainly its video and how it will perform, or at least assume it will perform in the real estate world, and I'll be stacking it up against the GH5S, the current workhorse that I shoot everything through. Let's go. All right, let's get into it. I'll go ahead and open up my notes and we can talk about everything we need to talk about. Ready? Let's go. So the very first thing we're going to be talking about is the cost. It is going to cost roughly $2,500, a little bit less. I think it is marketed at $2,499, which might as well be $2,500. So the first thing we'll talk about with the A74 coming out is its sensor. It's going to have a 33 megapixel oversampled 7K backlit CMOS sensor. Now the backlit and the oversampled 7K is what allows it to have its really good low light performance that it's already showing from tests. So if you've seen Gerald Undone's video going over the specs of this, you already know it has scored a 12.8 on his dynamic range test, and it also scores 1/3 of a stop better than the A7S3, which puts it right in line with Sony's flagship A1, a camera that costs a little over double what this will when it comes out. This sensor will have 15 stops of dynamic range and will have an ISO of between 50 and 204,000. Now it varies a little bit if you're doing photos or video, but those are the extremes to either level. When it comes down to video, when you are shooting S-Log3 on the A74 coming out, it starts at a native ISO of 800, but also has a secondary ISO native of 3200. Now I use the GH5S currently right now, and it has a native of 400 and then another native of 1600. That dual native ISO really helps when doing videos of real estate interiors, because as you know, most of them are so traditionally low light, unless you're doing these big extravagant mansions. If you're doing traditional housing, low light is king. So that's what's allowing this camera with a higher megapixel to actually score so well with the low light tests. The next thing we really should go over, since we're talking about real estate video, is specifically the 4K 60. It is available on this camera, and it will be available in 10-bit 422, but it will be cropped. They're not giving you a full frame 4K 60. It's going to be cropped down to the APS-C or Super 30, Super 35, whatever it's called. Either way, it's cropped down and it's not showing its full significance. And then if you turn on the internal stabilization, it crops in even more. Now in the real estate world, we're trying to show as wide as physically possible almost all the time. So this is a big negative drawback for me. Brings me back to my slider days. If you've seen all of my other videos, I rage on how much I like sliders because it allows you to shoot at a 24 frame a second. It's going to allow you to avoid that crop that's going to be built into this A74 whenever you're shooting 4K 60 in particular. Also, if you've seen my last videos, then you know that I hate Sony's old menu. I have the R2, I've mentioned in a couple of my old videos, and its menu is absolutely wretched. Luckily, the 7.4 coming out is going to have Sony's new menu, which is much easier to navigate, makes much more sense from a user standpoint. That's a good thing to see. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the information I'm bringing you. It helps me as a creator decide what future content to make, and it helps me rise to the top and defeat the YouTube algorithm gods. But seriously, just like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Back to the programming. Now let's talk about two things that will really matter in the real estate video world, especially if you do agent walkthroughs or agent interviews, and that is the Semitone. Everybody's been talking about it forever. Everybody knows what it is, the Semitone. Now keep in mind, this is not a flat profile like a log is, but it's more of a fully finished product straight out of camera, designed for skin tones in particular, and designed to hasten up your post-production workflow with less grading involved. Now, I don't necessarily know how this is going to equate over into the traditional real estate videos world, but if you are shooting agents and agent interviews and agent walkthroughs, then this is definitely going to be a time saver, because it's really going to help you on the back end where it comes to doing all of that skin grading, skin selecting, skin coloring. All that stuff takes a lot of time in post-production, and hopefully, since this camera will, just like the last, have Semitone, then it will be much easier in the future to grade these more entailed projects like agent walkthroughs. Along the lines of that, let's just talk about how Sony keeps continually upgrading its autofocus system. This includes both animal and human eye tracking. Now, this is going to make a huge difference when you're doing these agent walkthrough videos. Right now, that is a big disadvantage of my GH5S. Its autofocus is so horrible, it might as well be non-existent. I never ever use it. Tons of breathing and pulsing on the autofocus system. It's terrible at detecting eyes. Everything about it is bad on the GH5S. It is my biggest downfall when shooting these agent walkthrough videos. But with the new Sony A7IV, it has an incredible autofocus system designed very specifically for tracking the eye, the most important part to keep in focus, which allows you to pay more attention to the framing and following your agent around the property than making sure you're constantly pulling focus correctly. That is going to be a big win in my opinion. And for those of you interested in the shirt, comes from Pup Centrals. I'll link it down below so you can check out some of their gear. Support small business. I always do. This shirt rocks, and dogs are usually better than people. That being said, let's go. Now, with all those upgrades, there are a few things I've talked about in my older videos talking about my R2 that drive me absolutely bananas that they have fixed on this camera. One of those being the full-size HDMI port. I always brag about the GH5 full-size HDMI port. I hate it on the R2, the HDMI mini and the little adapter plug, those would always break. It's a horrible design, but now they fixed that and went with the full HDMI, which I absolutely love. Another feature they've also reintegrated into this one is the fully articulating screen, just like my GH5S has. This is an awesome feature when you are trying to film yourself or trying to get your cameras into corners to get the widest angle of a room. This fully articulating screen really allows you to kind of tilt it out to yourself or tilt it in any direction. It's much more advantageous than the old flip out screen, so this is another big win. Keep that articulating screen. It also has 2 card slots, one being an SD-CF mix combo and the other being just an SD, allowing you to record in mixed media formats, but only one of them is the dual slot that will allow either. Once again, big upgrade. My GH5S has no option for CF, so that's kind of a downfall and a big win for the new Sony. And the last thing we'll talk about, since I've already talked about it on the GH5S, and the new Sony A7IV is going to have a breathing compensation mode. So what this does is it crops into the view a little bit and it will get rid of a lot of that focus breathing that you see. My R2 did it horribly. Lots of cameras do it now really bad, but this is designed to hopefully negate a little bit of that breathing, and I'm excited to see how this actually works in kind of the shallow depth of field interview type situations. Now, all that being said, am I going to be leaving the Micro Four Thirds world forever and traveling forevermore into full frame Sony world? I don't know. I'm not going to give up my camera. I love the GH5. This was the first camera that really got me interested in filming and cinematic qualities of film and really producing and pushing my craft to the next level. So I can't imagine just instantaneously giving up on it like that. But I can guarantee you that this new camera, I do want to try out. The Sony A7IV seems like, I don't want to say a game changer, but it's definitely an upgrade to what I'm using now in many specs. And since it now also has all that 10-bit 422 codec that matches with the GH5S, it's another good cause for upgrade. All that, and we haven't even touched on the photography side of this camera. Its auto IAF is super duper fast, so photos are great. It has a 33 megapixel camera, which means it is much higher than actually required. Most people only require 12 to 24 because nothing goes beyond screen. So you're already advanced in the sensor world. This thing is literally a beast. Sony said when they were releasing this camera that they really were trying to capture the best hybrid camera on the market. They wanted it to produce not only excellent photos, but also everything that us video creators, YouTube, and content creators are looking for out of our basic DSLR cameras. As always, if you like the information I provide and the way I presented it, please press like, mash that subscribe button, and I will catch you next time. So I keep getting asked, what is this glowing light behind me? You want to know? You really want to know? It's a lightsaber. Yeah, I'm pretty nerdy, right? But it worked, right? Who needs a nan light when you've got a lightsaber?